Now, a little bit more about another Trump fool, maggot worm. I'm talking about Kari Lake, the former TV news reader on television in Arizona. She is also the Republican Senate candidate in Arizona. And she also claims she lost the 2022 race for governor because of fraud perpetrated against her. Well, she has been sued by the Republican Maricopa County recorder, one Stephen Richer, or Ricker, R-I-C-H-E-R, Ricker. Let's call him Ricker. Mr. Ricker is suing her because of what she has done to his life. He's a Republican. And when notified of the lawsuit, Kari Lake has declined to defend herself against this defamation lawsuit, which means she is admitting guilt to what is being charged by Stephen Richer. The request for a default judgment tries to or seeks to bypass the opportunity to argue that her statements weren't defamatory. She wants to just skip ahead to determine how much she owes Stephen Richer. So she's admitting that the things she said were lies and bullshit. The court where this was filed already rejected her first motion, which was to dismiss the case. And the Arizona Supreme Court, when she went that direction, declined to listen to her appeal, knowing it's just bullshit. So the guy who was harmed in this, Stephen Richer, the Republican Maricopa County recorder, he said, quote, "After months of doubling down and defending their lies across Arizona in the media and on social media, when push comes to shove, the defendants decided to completely back down and concede that their lies were just that, lies." The defendants being, of course, Kari Lake, this psychopath. I mean, she has to be crazy. Now, in announcing through the courts that she's not going to defend her statements in court, Kari Lake maintains she was truthful and says she wants to avoid spending time and money on a protracted legal process. And she questioned whether Mr. Richer can prove that he was harmed by her statements and demanded he release his medical and psychological records to prove it. You see, this is just more of the Trump M.O. Kari Lake said in a video posted on social media, quote, "By participating in this lawsuit, it would only serve to legitimize the perversion of our legal system and allow bad actors to interfere in our upcoming election, so I won't be taking part," end quote. Which is gobbledygook bullshit, which is typically what you expect from someone whose brain has been eaten by the maggots of Donald Trump. What she is saying, well, I don't have time to defend against this, so I'm not even going to argue about it. Just tell me how much I owe the bastard. What? Well, doesn't that mean that you're admitting guilt, Kari? Huh? Now, the lawyers for the harmed person, the plaintiff in this case, Maricopa County recorder, Stephen Richer, his lawyers asked the court to sanction Lake and the other defendants, arguing that they were trying to waste time and delay recovery, the phase of a lawsuit where the parties turn over documents. You know what recovery of what discovery is: text messages, emails, all this other shit. And there has been, according to Associated Press, there has been considerable speculation in Arizona and Washington about whether discovery in this defamation case would unearth damaging or embarrassing communications that could affect Kari Lake's phony-ass Senate campaign in Arizona. In other words, what she's trying to do is admit to being a lying son of a bitch. Now, the plaintiff in this case, the county recorder, Maricopa County recorder, Stephen Richer, who's a Republican, and he's the one whose job it is to validate the election results. And Kari Lake lost in her attempt to be governor, and she's screamed foul and cheating and fraud ever since, and defamed Mr. Richer. Now, Richer told the Associated Press yesterday that he's still going to demand records from Kari Lake to prove damages, because now what he's going to do is go after damages just like they went after Trump for damages. Lake, as you know, former Phoenix television news anchor, and she built up a political following because she decided to become another one of Donald Trump's fellatio artists and to support his lie that the 2020 election was stolen from him. So when she lost her attempt to become governor of Arizona last year, she decided to file a lawsuit challenging the results, and screaming the same kind of garbage that comes out of the orange bastard's mouth. Fraud, it was stolen from me. Ah. Now, it just so happens she's the second Trump sucker to give up the chance to defend herself in this case. She's the second person to defend in against a defamation lawsuit. The first was Rudy the Bat Giuliani. He was found liable for defaming those two Georgia election workers. And a judge found Giuliani ignored his duty as a defendant to turn over information that was requested by the workers. And then ultimately a jury awarded the women $148 million, which of course they will never see. In Mr. Richer's lawsuit filed in Maricopa County Superior Court, he names Kari Lake, her husband, her campaign, and her political fundraising group as defendants. And in addition to asking for monetary damages, which Richer does not specify, could be $1, could be $1 million. He doesn't specify. He's seeking a court order declaring Kari Lake's statements false and requiring her to delete her phony-ass bullshit statements from social media. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court, in precedent rulings, has set a pretty high bar for defamation cases brought by public officials, like Mr. Richer. That's what he is, a public official. And according to the Associated Press, he would have been required to prove not just that Lake's statements were untrue, but she made them with actual malice, that is, knowing that they were false, or with reckless disregard for whether they were true or false. That would have been her defense. That would have been what he had to prove if she were contending the case. But she's not going to contend it. She's admitting her guilt. And his lawsuit takes issue with two claims in particular. That Mr. Richer intentionally had 19-inch ballot images printed on 20-inch paper, which caused counting problems, and that he injected 300,000 bogus ballots into the machines. And his lawsuit details nearly 36 times she made those claims publicly on social media or at rallies with the Orange Bastard or at news conferences, continuing. I mean, Kari Lake is a good Christian girl, right? Well, maybe not. But she claims to be. But lies after lies after lies. And in his lawsuit, the guy bringing the case, Stephen Richer, or Ricker, what do I know? But he says he has faced death threats, including one that was prosecuted already by the Justice Department. He's spent thousands of dollars on home security. He said that he and his wife have had to alter their routes where they're going places, and law enforcement has stepped up patrols around his home and his workplace. Sound familiar, doesn't it? What happens to people who point out that Trump and the filth and the scum like this Kari Lake that associate themselves with Trump, that they are liars, bums, grifters. They cause people grief and heartache and expense and fear. So the bottom line here After all the farting and wheezing and screeching and burping that this woman has done about, oh, it was stolen from me. I should be governor, but I'm not because it was stolen from me. So I want to be senator. But I don't want anything to come out in discovery if I defend myself against the defamation charge. I'll just say I'm not going to defend against it and let the court proceed to tell me how much I owe for defaming Mr. Richer. What a bunch of shit. These people never stop, do they? Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.